Mr. Bell, I think you're up.
All right. Okay. What we're talking about here is a memorandum of understanding with the Town of Front Royal. The Town of Front Royal Police Department is purchasing through a Motorola subsidiary a evidence management system. It's designed to combine body camera, vehicle camera, written reports, recorded interviews, audio and video recorded that are done in their interview rooms. Everything involving a case will be digitized and uploaded to this system. Now, once it goes up into the system, it's held securely, backed up off-site, and anytime anybody accesses that system, there's an audit trail that goes with it. Now, what we are looking at is buying what's called Judicial Vault, add-on to that system. What that allows us to do is to mirror everything on the secure system and be able to go in, have our own copy of everything the Front Royal Police Department has that we can then edit and then allow access to defense counsel. Now, the Judicial Vault add-on for the original setup, the training, the underlying program itself, and the first year's data storage fees comes out to just under 12,000 and change. Now, I had approached finance at the end of the fiscal year and said, look, we've still got vacancy savings money from the county-funded body cam position, that was never expended because the person who had that position bailed on us at the beginning of March to go where the pastures were greener at the Fairfax County Commonwealth Attorney's Office. So what I'd like to do is carry over that money into the new fiscal year and use it to buy into the town system. Now, the reason we want to do this, to give you an example, today, I had a case set for preliminary hearing this afternoon, which is now in the hands of one of my assistants, where there was a theft from Rural King, and at some point, we had never gotten our own copy of the store video from Rural King, which was provided to the Front Royal Police Department. So that's several phone calls, an investigator downloading that from his system onto a thumb drive, handing to an officer who is on his way over for court here anyhow, us getting the thumb drive, then plugging the thumb drive into a computer, plugging another thumb drive into the computer, downloading that for the defense counsel and say, here, look at that before the prelim this afternoon. Now you can imagine the amount of, just for that one incident, I had to tie up one of my staffers for about 10-15 minutes working the phones to the PD. The investigator with the police department had to spend about 5 or 10 minutes locating that file, putting it on a thumb drive. Another officer, well, his time was already sunk bringing it over. I had to run down there, figure out, are you the mule with my thumb drive? Get that, then get one of my staffers to plug it in and review it while it was downloading to get it then to the defense counsel. So we're talking a half hour, 45 minutes worth of personnel time for something that with this system is 2 mouse clicks.
Does the county have, so does the sheriff's department have a similar system?
The sheriff is homebrewing his own system from what I understand.
Why?
Yeah. Why can't we standardize? Wouldn't that make life easier for everybody?
Yes. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if the sheriff and the police department had gone together on the purchase of this system through Motorola, there would have been a bulk purchase savings that would accrue to everybody. But we are where we are. Now, as I say, at this point, this will give us immediate access to Front Royal Police Department on it. Now, the memorandum of understanding says that we do the upfront cost and we do the first year of data storage fees, but the town has agreed to pick up data storage fees in the oncoming year as part of their ongoing maintenance of the system. So once we pay this, it's no longer going to cost the county anything further. Which works out because the PD just did not have the budgetary room. They were they were originally going to see if they could do this regardless because of the amount of savings just for them, but they couldn't swing it. But they did say, look, John, if you can do the buy-in, then we can cover the data storage in future years as part of our overhead. Yeah. And
I would like to explore getting the county, the sheriff's department to do so that we can maximize. We need to start the standardizing of these systems so that we can share information easily.
That makes way too much sense.
I know, well, yeah, I know.
Yeah, you're gonna need the same thing from both entities, so it would make sense that
Yep.
they all three connect.
Yeah.
Make it easier on everybody, but
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
especially you.
do you know anything about what it would take to get the county on board with that?
The
Have
sheriff's
you had any conversations with?
I've just had passing conversations with the town. Look, it's not cheap. It's a huge upfront cost.
Okay.
Because just the add-on module here is 12 grand plus change. On it. I think they're spending like $40,000 up front to get that.
For the base software?
To get it set up, and then there's monthly maintenance on this. I don't know what the sheriff's department thought on this was, but I think it was thinking, let's buy the body cameras first. That's an expensive piece of hardware. We can homebrew our own data system, and then we'll approach the data system down the road. Now, it's one of these situations where the market has, for these things, has kind of shaken itself out, and virtually anything you buy is a glove that Motorola works the fingers of. So there's all these varieties of vendors, and Motorola has bought a chunk of all of them. So at least to me, it makes sense, for the sheriff's department and the PE to go in on this, just like it would have made sense for them to combine on dispatch.
Right.
Yeah, but again, that's somebody else's. There's a Polish saying which I've never been able to pronounce in the original, but translates as "not my circus, not my monkeys."
Yeah.
But it is
No.
our circus and it is our monkey.
Yes. Yeah. So that's why I'm basically saying, look, I want to bust the fiscal year, haul back in for the cash that we had on this. I want to give it away to the town of Front Royal, and it makes sense. It makes sense for me to waste all this money because, frankly, it's going to save us immense amount of time and money in the future.
Right.
Also, too, if you look at the Virginia General Assembly, they're looking at making body cams a requirement, not just an option. As a matter of fact, the Senate has just passed an appropriations bill for extra funding for body cams. It hasn't gone through the
I
House
don't
yet.
know, they're not gonna need them because they're gonna get rid of 25% of the
Senate
budget
state, yeah.
for their police department,
Well,
so.
for state.
I don't know who's wearing the body cams.
They're trying to, they're trying to do everything at once, and it's just an absolute friggin' nightmare. I mean, the Senate has passed a bill which I don't think they realize it has turned every drug dog in Virginia. If the House passes it and stays, it's turned every drug dog in Virginia into a house pet. They basically declared that the odor of marijuana is not sufficient reason to conduct a search, and any search conducted just on the odor of marijuana, the results cannot be used in any further proceeding, which the way it's drafted would probably include probation violation proceedings as well. So, all drug dogs at this point are trained to alert on marijuana as well as a variety of other substances. And they give one alert signal. The dogs don't, tap right paw if it's weed, left paw if it's heroin. They just give one alert. And so with this, having a dog that will alert on marijuana is about as useful as having a dog that will alert on methamphetamine, heroin, and the great smell of Old Spice.
Yeah, that's
To
unfortunate.
differentiate that, yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. So you know how much a trained drug dog.
They're
well,
very expensive. We have several of them
Yes.
in our community.
And the Senate of Virginia has potentially made all of them worthless.
Yeah, they're tens of thousands of dollars if they're good drug dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, and
What
now.
type of time frame are we on this?
The sooner the better. The town is basically spending the money now on it and are trying to get it rolled out within the next month or so.
Okay.
Okay, now the module, what type of time frame on that?
They'd like to get the module installed at the same time as they're doing everything else.
So within 45 days?
Yeah, yeah. And again, this theoretically, there should be sufficient money if you recognize the carryover from last year, which I talked to finance about. And by the way, the new finance director was the first time I sat down with somebody who actually prepared for a meeting and asked intelligent questions about other items in my budget, and we were able to solve some issues that had been kind of dropped previously. So at this point, I'm a fan. Yeah.
All right.
Friday's his last day.
That's the look.
Oh God.
John, that's true.
Oh God.
Yeah, maybe you can go down and have to change his mind.
Well, like for example, he was alerted to the fact that the victim witness who got transferred to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office last fall, the budget hadn't been shifted over. So we had a hole in my budget, and then there was unused funds sitting in the Sheriff's Department budget for still that line item.
So you have the funds, all you need is approval from our board.
Theoretically, yeah. As I said, if you can confirm that the funds from the last fiscal year were in fact sequestered and carried over into this fiscal year, which we had talked to finance about and had gotten, I think, approval from the previous county administration, which, I don't know if that was ever documented. So basically after that meeting, the instructions were for the assistant town attorney to draft the memorandum of understanding with the idea that the money had been
Allocated to you?
allocated to me for this purchase.
Okay.
Be put on the next budget, next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The MOU's already drafted and
Okay.
ready to go, so it
That's
just
great.
needs approval.
Yeah. And the town has reviewed the memorandum of understanding.
And they're okay with it?
They're okay with it.
Okay.
On it, and we have the contract, which has already been passed over to Caitlin for review, and again, she's drafted the memorandum of understanding, which has also been reviewed and approved by the town.
Okay.
Good enough.
Thank you.
Any
Thank
other
you,
questions?
Mr. Bell.
Thanks, John. All right. Mr. Bean.
Mr. Beam, how are you?
Doing well today. Doing well. I believe that you've got the draft ordinance in front of you. The ordinances have required updating for a little while, and that's what we're trying to do at this point in time.
Is this the ordinance, Mr. Bean?
That is, everything that is read is the changes.
The changes that you want?
Yes, the ordinance
Okay.
is there, it's already
So,
in print.
okay.
It's already chapter 150 of the county code.
Okay.
So the only changes that we're making are the red ones. There are three parts to this code change as far as the proposed draft document to be put out for public comment and then approval. The first one is the required code updates for the references. Okay, if you see in the very first one under definitions, most of that language is revolving around the actual state code item, which is 62.1/44.15, semicolon 15. What happened is that when the state changed from Department of Conservation and Recreation, the oversight of this, they put it into DEQ's hands, Department of Environmental Quality. They had the entire ordinance, the act, moved from one section to another. This is 9 pages of crosswalk changes that had changed from one section to another section. So when this actually happened, we needed to update our ordinance to reflect that, because that way it gave us the actual language to give us the authority to enforce this chapter 150. Those pieces need to be taken care of without any real question about it, because right now, if we were to actually cite one of them, we could have an issue. I don't think that we would, but we could have an issue. The second part is to ensure that the changes that were made during the move, because there were changes that were made during that transition from DCR to DEQ that actually changed the act as it goes. In 2013, we had out for public comment a combined erosion and sediment control and stormwater program and erosion and sediment control, because that was what was being mandated for the localities to do. Prior to that time frame, we spent approximately a year and a half developing a combined ordinance. It finally got down to the decision makers, and July 1st, 2014, when this went into effect, the Code of Virginia, the legislation, decided that they did not want to enforce or force the localities to actually implement the stormwater program. They said, you have the option to take it on, but you don't have to. So Warren County decided not to, which most of the jurisdictions adjacent to us also did, unless they were already in the position of what's called an MS4. It's a sanitary sewer system issue, which is what the 4 S's stand for. They already implemented the stormwater management program, so they have a program already in place. That would be the city of Winchester and I believe the Department of Education for Frederick County, because they are mainly revolving around the city. Anyway, we spent a year and a half developing this just to put it on the shelf. It went through public comment. We submitted it to DEQ for review. When DEQ came back, they had, I think, about 10 to 15 items that they needed to adjust, but that was still in that transition period. So that was tabled pretty much because there was no requirement to do it at that time. The changes that I'm talking about on the second part is some of these things that were incorporated here actually were changed. We did not change our ordinance at that time to reflect those. They were kind of pieces that may have implications, but really they didn't. As long as the Stormwater Act was in place and somebody was enforcing it, we really didn't have to have it within Chapter 150 for the erosion and sediment control. Those pieces are tried to, the ones that we have found over the time frame that we have at this point in time, found to be not problematic, but more of an issue to the local contractors and things that need to be drawn out and put into the ordinance so that they don't have to go back to the stormwater to take a look at it. They know up front, here's what I'm looking at. If I've got a reference, I can go back to the state code and look at it that way. The third piece is basically a change in the way that we're actually conducting business. When we were doing this and prior to that, we required 3 sets of hard copies from every contractor to start the erosion and sediment control plan. That's not for a single family dwelling, which is an agreement in lieu of, it's for the larger projects. Currently, because we're into the digital phase and we're accepting digital copies, the code, Chapter 150, still says you have to submit 3 copies, okay? So we're getting inundated with paper, and every time they resubmit, they're submitting 3 copies. There's a few changes in here that say now you can submit a digital copy and 1 hard copy, and after that, all of the modifications, any of the changes, we can do digitally. At the very end, we'll go ahead and get a hard copy so that we can submit and do that. That takes it down to 2 hard copies. We don't have all this paper everywhere. In the end, what we end up doing is it goes into the shredder. So I have staff time just basically shredding it because that's documents that don't need to be out into the public.
So does this change it so they can just turn in
Exactly, yes.
digital?
1 copy, 1 hard copy at the beginning and 1 digital.
Okay.
If they choose to. That way it's up entirely to them. So like I said, there are 3 parts to what is going into this, and that's the requirement for the code changes, the actual numbers. The second is to provide some clarification on things that they may have to do now so that it's drawn out right in front of them. And the third one is just clerical type changes. And I've documented each one of those in the red sections, and actually you do have the copy that has my notes that are out there to the
Yep.
side of it. So that gives you what my thought process was through there. Mostly, we just need to say, yes, we want to put it out for public comment so that we can get it out there to get it approved. My approach has been a timeline of today presenting this to you. On Tuesday, the 15th, basically on the consent agenda, just to advertise for public comment. And then on October the 20th, public hearing and either approval or consideration so that we can get it done in a timely fashion. Caitlin has
Mr.
actually...
Daly, can we do that?
Okay. Caitlin has actually taken a look at it as well, and there were 3 items that she pointed out that I'm going back to take a look at. The very first one is in the very first chapter definitions, and it's supposed to be Article 2.4 as opposed to just point 2 under Act, which is the second bullet point right there. Instead of just the 2, it should be 2.4. The second one was back on page, get my copy so I've got the right page here.
Caitlin, you were good.
Yeah,
She is. She does a tremendous job. Page 19 of 23.
This is dry reading on top of it.
This,
Yes.
It may be about soil and water erosion, but it's dry reading.
this particular one she pointed out as far as the fees, and the actual code section that's listed here says that the jurisdiction may charge. I think there may be, we can change that, but the Act gives us the ability to charge fees to compensate for our costs. Where this is actually in here, and this is actually code text that's already in existence, it's not part of the red changes. It says there shall be a fee charged. Caitlin pointed out, well, the Act actually just says may. It doesn't say you shall charge it. I'll probably still get with her to go over that and make sure, because the way that this was is actually the language that was there. I just changed the basic documentation as far as where the code was.
So are you telling me that you'll change shall to may?
Maybe. Caitlin and I will talk about that, and I'll point that out to you before I submit it for public comment.
I've got to remember that.
well, that's not a big, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but
I
it
know, but
is.
it is.
It is.
I
Because when
know.
they get in there and they think you may charge them and then you
That's
shall
right,
charge.
yeah.
Caitlin, the way that I'm reading it, because I did go back and take a look at it, it says that the jurisdictions may, under the Act. We're saying that the Board of Supervisors during this time, because it does go down and says the Warren County Board of Supervisors, according to the fees set by the Warren County. That's where the shall,
I think the issue is the way it's currently written, it makes it seem as though the code requires us to do fees. I think it's just a matter of changing as permitted under Code Section 62, blah, 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 of the Code of Virginia, there shall be a fee charged. Just something minor like that. It's just, I think it's a wrong characterization.
I've got
That's
no
it.
issues with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, unless you tell me that you don't want to charge fees, then that's entirely up to your discretion.
Now, where is this going to be available, since we're gonna have a public meeting? This is gonna be available for people before
review.
that.
There'll
Yeah.
be
Where
a
will
cop,
that be?
there'll be a copy at the admin office, there'll be a copy at our office, there'll actually be one online to view, and you will have your own copies as far as that goes as
Okay,
well.
and it's something advertised in the paper and so forth for
Yes,
people to know
yes.
that this
We'll
is.
we'll put it in as far as for
I
that
mean,
as
it's,
well.
I know that's normal for,
Other
but
items.
things get, I can't see this being something that's gonna stick out to people so much.
It'll be a
So-
public hearing.
Yes.
Well, and your contractors are gonna
Mhm.
review it. Yeah.
It was very surprising when we did the combined program back in 13, October 15th, 13. I had probably 4 or 5 comments that were provided back. We made those changes because they were actual changes, kind of like what Caitlin has caught, because you've got quite a few pages there.
Right.
We've put them in, and like I said, it was approved. None of the individuals that provided comments had any issues after the fact of
Good.
changing it. So I don't know that it's going to be too controversial, but
Right.
You never know.
Well, is there, so I was just gonna ask you, are there any unintended consequences that you have identified in here? Because you probably know from experience.
The pieces that I had any real conversations with are, and this is a term that has been brought in by DEQ, is on page 3. It's the very top one.
Okay,
Common plan of development. In 2014, when they enacted the new code into DEQ's hands and the new section, there was terminology, and actually if you look down at the very bottom, development, what they've told me is they took that term and they've removed it and basically replaced it with common plan of development. And if you have a subdivision that was platted prior to July 1st, 2014, you're kind of grandfathered in. It's not a common plan of development any longer. Anything after that, if you come in and say, I want to create this subdivision, now everything in there is a common plan of development. So if we take the Riverton Commons that's out here,
Right.
the Aldi, the restaurant for Chipotle's and Five Guys, even though they were less than 1 acre, whereas the threshold for stormwater, because they're part of that entire complex, they still have to submit all their stormwater to DEQ because they're considered a common plan of development. So it doesn't matter the size or the scope in those particular areas, they're considered a common plan of development. There are things that happen as far as with subdivisions. That's probably the biggest piece, and that's probably the one area that I have the most angst about having to explain to a contractor coming in and saying, okay, I want to do this. Well, you're going to have to go to DEQ as well. Well, why? It was platted. Well, you've never touched the ground, you've never put a road in, you've never done anything. It may be platted, but you haven't done anything. Therefore, you're now starting it. It's a common plan of development.
okay,
That's probably one of the biggest pieces that I would say.
all right,
Yeah, I
Thank
have
you.
tried to look at those pieces to make sure that I've caught those, and that's where I said, it's the second part that I was talking about, that those things that I would rather have up front and in front of somebody ahead of time, as opposed to, oh, by the way, kind of a scenario. And that's what
Right.
we're having to do with the current chapter, as far as that goes. If you have any questions, I think it's pretty well straightforward. I'd be happy to answer anything.
Just one
Yeah.
question, will the Builders Association get a copy of what?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I'll make sure that they have it in front of them. In fact, most of the builders that are part of the association probably will never even see any difference within this because, as I was explaining, the single-family dwelling, if you stay in that category, it's an agreement in lieu of. And basically, it's a $5 flat fee for us to do the inspections throughout the entire process. You go in and you say, I'm going to keep basically the controls in place to keep everything on the site. And that's how they go forward with it. But,
it's
yes.
only if you're doing a developer is doing a large subdivision or something of that nature that this has impact.
I'll break it,
Starting a new one?
starting a new one
Yeah.
at this point in time. Or if somebody has actually platted it, we're dealing with a couple right now that have had to go back to DEQ because they've never actually done anything to the property. So it may be.
Other than platted out?
Other than platted out, yes,
Wow.
yes. The way that the erosion and sediment control program works is that anything over 10,000 square feet or a single-family dwelling requires a permit. After that, after you hit 1 acre, DEQ requires for a single-family dwelling, and this is disturbed area, not lot size, but disturbed area. If you hit 1 acre, they have a stack of papers, probably at least that thick or not thicker, that you actually have to have on site if an inspector stops by and looks at your site. And there is information that you have to fill out, the location and things of that nature, but that's required for anything that's more than an acre of disturbance.
But it's always telling you what you're looking for, right?
Yes.
I
Yep.
mean, they're not expected to go into it blind.
No. In fact, we make sure that when a contractor comes in, we find out the size of the disturbed area. If it exceeds the 1 acre, we say, you need to go to the website at this location. Here is the paperwork. We have a copy of it there. We don't provide it to them because then we would keep on just providing paperwork all the time.
Right.
Here's where you can find it. This is what you need to do. You don't have to contact DEQ, but you have to have this in place. So we try to at least give them that upfront knowledge so that they have it. Once you hit 5 acres for a single family dwelling, then you've got to go into stormwater. The DEQ requires it after the 5 acres. I probably have only seen 1, maybe 2 that have to start more than 5 acres for a single family dwelling.
Yeah.
So it's not usual for that. It's the ones that have purchased maybe 30 or 40 acres and the location that they want is
It's
on
in
the
the
top.
top of the hill.
And you've got to wind everything through there, you've got to
Right.
grade everything back, and then you're into that development. So,
Okay.
Good, thank you very much.
thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
Are the contractors still meeting the last Wednesday of the month, or are they not because of COVID?
When they request it, I've put the offer out now in the evenings, yes, they are typically still meeting. Our meeting in the afternoon, if they have anything to bring forward, then they say, hey, we've got things that we'd like to discuss. And go forward.
I used to go to the ones in the evening, but kind of quit because I was the only one showing up.
They had one, I think, about 2, it may have been 4 weeks ago now, that it was a provision that they had talked about. I never actually got the information that they were discussing. Apparently, it really didn't involve us. It was more of a contracting license issue. But even the president of the organization wasn't aware the meeting was going on, so he wasn't here. So.
Well, I knew COVID was an issue, so.
It has been. In fact, when they asked that question, do we still have the room and can we still meet? That was their question, and we gave them the parameters.
I always enjoyed going to them. I learned a lot, so I just thought
Yes.
if they were doing it again, I'd start going again.
Yep. And we have a new building code that will be coming into effect, I believe, in fall at this point in time of 2021. So it'll be in 2021, but it'll be the 2018 codes. Virginia takes an approach to take the codes and works it through the 3-year cycle, just like ICC does, and that's what we do. So we're always 3 years behind ICC because we have to take those, make sure that they fit within the Virginia code to start with, and then also any provisions that were put in that Virginia doesn't agree with, we get those pulled back out. In fact, meeting-wise, I attend the code change meetings so that I know what's going on, so that I'm aware of things, and I can make sure that the items that may not be beneficial to the local contractors are kind of pulled back a little bit. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
not a problem. Thank you again.
Thank you a lot. Hope your day goes well.
So do I. Thanks.
I don't think we have anything else in our work session, correct?
Motion for adjournment.
I move the motion.
I think it's a little early for that one.
Second?
Well,
Second.
yeah,
Somebody second my
Whenever-
motion.
second,
So moved.
third, fourth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whenever you think